Welcome back. Now it's time to display the list of boards that we have. And in order to do so, we of course need to add some more code. So let's get started. Therefore, I'm going to go to the main activity, and there we need to create a new function which will take care of populating our board. So let's go ahead and create it here. Fun populate boards list to UI. So I'm going to call it. And we first need the boards list, which is going to be an array list of boards. So array list of board. And then we need to import board here. And now we can start with the code for this function. Okay, so what do we want to do here? Well, first of all, we want to hide the progress bar if it was loading before. So let's hide it. Then we want to check if the boards list is empty or not, or is 0 or not. So boards list size is greater 0. If it's more than 0, what we know is that we can make our RV boards list visible. So let's set the visibility to view.visible. And then we can go ahead and make the TV no boards available text invisible. So here visibility set to view.gone, because invisible is not going to be enough. It actually has to get out of our whole layout. Then I'm going to tell my RV boards list what kind of layout manager I want to use. So here layout manager will be a linear layout manager, where I then pass this activity to, and then I can set has fixed size to true, so that our boards list has a fixed size. All right, so that's what this function does. It's a Recyclerview function, and adapter changes cannot affect the size of the Recyclerview. Then, as always with Recyclerviews, they need an adapter, right? So let's prepare an adapter here, which will be our board items adapter that we created in the last video. Here we needed to pass a context and the list that we want to use. The list that I want to use is the boards list. Okay, so if you recall, boards item adapter is the class that we created in the last video. We needed to pass in a context and then a list of boards. Okay, so that's what we do here. And now we can assign that adapter to our boards list. So at RV board list adapter should be the adapter that we just created. And then if the board list is in fact empty, then we don't want to display our board list, but we want to do it the other way around pretty much. So here, then our boards list should be gone, and the text that says that there are no boards available, this one here, this text view, no boards are available, should be set to visible. So this function will just take care of creating the boards in the UI. It's not just gonna actually download it, right? Because we will download it somewhere else, then we will pass it to this function, and this function will then go ahead and display everything in the UI. Okay, now I want to make a little change in my board, because the board doesn't know about his ID. So I'm gonna create a new variable here, val document ID, which is a string. And then we of course need to add that here as well. So parcel read string. Then further down here, parcel write string with the document ID. Okay, then in the constants, I will also use this assigned to. So I'm going to create a assigned to variable in my utils constant. So here we have the mobile with the name, the image, the boards, everything. Now let's create one for our assigned to. Okay, assigned to, which will be a string, which will just have this text called assigned to. because now we can use this constant instead of using the string, which will be a magical string, and it's always difficult to then find the right spot where we use that string and how we called it, and if we made a mistake, then it's going to be difficult to find that mistake. So it's really a lot easier when you just work with constants that you can then quite easily adjust. All right, so now we can go to our Firestore class, because now it's actually time to get the boards list from our Firestore database. So let's go ahead and create a new function here. So here we created the board, then we update user profile. Well, let's create a function to get the boards list, and we need to get the main activity as the activity that calls this function. Then I'm gonna use this collection stuff as well. So Firestore collection with the constants dot boards. Then now we are using queries. So that is something that is pretty powerful, and that is a feature that Firestore offers that unfortunately the real-time database of Firebase doesn't offer. And that's really where the power of Firestore lies. That's why we use it. Okay, I thought about using a database or a real-time database, and I even tried to build it there, but man, oh man, that was a tough one. It really made things so much more difficult when you wanted to create a maintainable and hugely flexible database structure. That was a pain. So I decided to go with the Firestore approach, and this is why, pretty much. So the stuff that we're going to do now is really a big part of why I decided to use the Firestore. So we are checking where the array contains constants dot assigned to. And what is it assigned to? Well, our current user ID. So current user, actually we need to get it right, get current user ID, this one. Okay, so what we're doing is we're checking the boards collection where the value for assigned to is the current user ID. So if we look at our boards here, for example, this board was created by this user, and that's the user ID of the current user ID, or of the current user that is logged in. That's the current user ID. So we just checked through all of the boards that we have where assigned to is equal to whatever this ID is that we have. Okay, and if it's the same, then we want to display this board, because then we want to use this board and it was assigned to us. So either we created it as ourselves, so it's assigned to us, or somebody else created it and assigned it to us. Then we also want to see this board, because then we need to make adjustments on the board maybe, or we need to finish tasks, and this project is also assigned to us, and so forth. So what do we want to do with that? Well, we want to get it. So get, and then let's add an on success listener. So if that was successful, then we will get, and you can see there are multiple different options, what we will get, and I'm just going to get a document. Okay, so I'm just going to say, okay, now that you give me this document, let's use it. And I'm just going to write a little log entry here. So simple document, documents to string. So I'm just going to display the whole document, as well as I will create a boards list, which will be an array list of boards, which will be for now an empty array list. And of course I want to add all of the boards from that document to it. Okay, so this document is a snapshot, and the snapshot only contains the stuff that is assigned to us, so only the boards that are assigned to us. So what I can now do is I can go through the whole document and then add every single board to my board list. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, create a board, which is i2object, and here is our board : class.java. So we're basically saying whatever object you have there, now create a board object from it and store it in this board variable, which we then can use to, first of all, get the ID of that board. So now we don't only get the board list, but we're also getting the document ID of that board. And we can now go ahead and add that boards list, or that board, to the boards list. Now, as it seems, the document ID string, let's have a look what the problem is. Well, it has to do with toObject returning a nullable. These are the tricky ones, right? So it returns a nullable. That's why we need to use double exclamation marks here. And here I'm still getting a little error. That's because my document ID is a var, or should be a var instead of a val, because I want to be able to change the document ID. As you can see, that's what we do here. That's why I needed to change it real quick. Okay, so at this point we get the whole list, but what should we do now? Well, we should of course also populate our activity. So activity dot populate boards list to UI with the boards list that we just prepared. Okay, so that's what the whole boards list to UI function was for, right? It needed a boards list to then display the boards list in our Recyclerview. So that was the whole point of this function, and then we created this function to get the boards list to then populate our board with it. So that's the add-on success listener. Now let's add in failure listener as well, in which I'm just gonna hide the progress dialog. So here, add on failure listener with an exception here called E, and I'm just gonna say log E, simple name, error while creating a board. All right, the next step that I'm gonna do is also a little optimization step, so to speak. So let's go to the load user data function. So we have this function here, load user data, this one here. What I'm gonna do is I'm going to add a parameter here. So that's gonna be called read boards list, which will be a Boolean. All right, so I want to know if I should read the boards list or I shouldn't. And this will be relevant here in the update and navigation user detail, because I want to make sure that I only update the navigation user details and only read the boards in there if necessary. Okay, so let's go to our update navigation user details. And actually, before we do that real quick, I'm gonna assign false to this value. So not here, but here. I'm gonna assign default false. So this will be by default false. So you don't always have to add a value, but if you add one, then you can make changes to it. Okay. So now let's go over to our update navigation user detail. And here we need to accept a Boolean. And I'm gonna give it the same name. Will be a Boolean. The idea behind this is that we don't always load everything from scratch, but yeah, sometimes we just have to clean up things, right? Okay, so before we update this function, I want to make clear why we even need that. So inside of our main activity in the onCreate, we load the user data, right? So here, Firestore class, load user data. At this point, we want to also load the boards. So the user comes to the main activity for the first time, and then we want to load all of the boards of that user. So here we need to pass in true, because load user data is the function where we load the user data, right? So it reads the board list, or should it read the boards list Boolean true or false? Well, I say yes, please read it. So then it should read it when we load it the first time. But now let's say the user has this this flow. So he comes to the app and he sees all of his elements here. Then he goes to the profile. He changes something in the profile and he comes back to this activity. Then I don't want him to load the whole board once again. The board can stay the same as it was before. The page will load, but it will not load all of the details of the boards. It will just keep the boards as they were before. All right, so this is just a design decision. You You could have left that out, but it wouldn't be that optimized then. Okay, and now we can go back to our update navigation user details. And here I want to load the boards list if the read boards list is set to true. So if read boards list is set to true, then go ahead and show the progress dialog that we have prepared so far, which is this please wait progress dialog. So here you can use resources get string r string please wait, and then our Firestore class get boards list with this activity. And at this point we can finally test our application. All right, so projet manage, no boards are available, and then it loads them, and as you can see here, board with image and board without image. Okay, so these are our boards that we created earlier on. Now there is one thing that I'm not so happy about, and that is the fact that I cannot distinguish the two boards from each other, or where one ends and the other starts and so forth. So we should go back to our resources, and here we have the layout item board, and at the very bottom I want to add something. So it's just inside of the last linear layout, which is just a little separator. All right, so width should be match parent and height will be the item border or board divider height. All right, then the margin top. So here margin top should be divider margin top, and then finally I want to have a little background which will be add colors divider color. So it's this divider color that we prepared, this grayish whitish color, so slightly different than white. Okay, so let's close this and run this again. All right, and there we are. So there's this little line here, barely visible, but it's there, and that is this divider color. Of course you could make it more gray so it's a little more visible, but it is all design choices that you can make yourself. Okay, so that is it for this video. See you in the next one.